Everyone thinks the SpaceX IPO is about rockets. It's not. It's about your data. Because if SpaceX goes public, most investors won't be buying launch vehicles, they'll be buying Starlink, a global internet provider whose business runs on telemetry, location signals, and network traffic patterns generated by everyday users. And that matters because on January 15th, 2026, Starlink quietly updated its global privacy policy. Under the new default, customer data can be used to train AI models, including models at xAI, and shared with so-called third-party collaborators. Now layer that on top of IPO pressure like growth targets, margin expansion, monetization, and the fact that Starlink now accounts for the majority of SpaceX's revenue, suddenly, the question isn't just whether an IPO makes your internet faster, it's whether it makes consumer privacy thinner. I'm Jeff Galak, a professor at Carnegie Mellon University's Business School. And today, we're going to be talking about the likely SpaceX IPO and the consumer privacy downsides that could come with it. According to Reuters, SpaceX is actively being modeled for a potential IPO as early as mid-June 2026, with estimates north of $50 billion raised at a valuation above $1.5 trillion. The timing isn't confirmed, but the preparation clearly is. SpaceX generated roughly $15 to $16 billion in revenue in 2025, with about $8 billion in profit. And between 50 and 80% of that revenue came from Starlink. In practice, this would be an IPO of a global connectivity company. And connectivity businesses don't just sell bandwidth. They generate enormous volumes of operational data. That's where the privacy story really begins. Even without reading messages or decrypting content, Starlink collects telemetry and signal data to optimize routing and performance. That data shows where users are concentrated, when demand spikes, and how usage patterns change over time. Then there's traffic metadata. Even when content is encrypted, information about volume, timing, and endpoints can still reveal behavioral patterns. When people work, when they stream, and when households are active. And finally, geolocation. Starlink, of course, requires precise location data for beamforming, the process that keeps satellites locked onto user terminals. That operational necessity creates a highly granular, persistent map of where users are, when they move, and how consistently they're connected. Individually, each of these data streams is understandable. Together, they form a detailed behavioral profile, even without inspecting the content of a single communication. And when those data streams become inputs for AI models, especially models shared beyond the company, the privacy implications expand quickly. This is what I think of as a privacy to profit pipeline. Now, before we unpack that, if you find this kind of breakdown useful, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. It really helps the channel and lets me keep producing this kind of analysis. Back to the pipeline. Public markets reward margin expansion, and a core part of the Starlink investment narrative is that AI will reduce support costs, optimize networks, and improve monetization. That shift turns telemetry logs, traffic metadata, and usage patterns into something more than operational byproducts. They become core assets. You don't need to look inside packets to infer behavior. Traffic analysis alone can reveal work schedules, entertainment habits, and whether a household is home or traveling. When that metadata is linked to billing identities and device identifiers, it becomes deeply personal. Geolocation increases the risk further, because beamforming requires accurate, continuous location tracking. Starlink necessarily maintains a detailed record of where users are over time. That data is essential for service to function, but it also becomes an obvious candidate for AI training unless users actively opt out. Data retention amplifies everything. Starlink states it may retain data for the life of the account plus 2 years after cancellation. That is a long window for potential linkage, subpoena exposure, or breach impact, especially when retained data includes location, traffic patterns, and inferred behavior. I think many consumers would say, I didn't sign up for this level of data use. But under the policy, they did, by default. If you don't opt out, your telemetry, traffic metadata, and location-linked usage can be used to train AI models and shared with third parties. The core harm here isn't just privacy loss, it's loss of informed consent. From a consumer standpoint, the risk isn't one company using data to keep a network running. It's multiple unknown entities using data for their own independent purposes under uneven security standards with limited transparency. There's also a deeper trust issue when your internet service provider becomes an analytics engine. Consumers may accept behavioral inference from social media companies, but they react very differently when the same logic applies to the service that sees essentially everything you do online. And choice isn't evenly distributed. In rural areas, disaster zones, or regions with poor infrastructure, Starlink isn't just an option. It's essential. That reduces consumers' ability to meaningfully reject privacy terms. The choice exists on paper, but not in practice. The issue isn't simply that Starlink trains AI. It's that telemetry, traffic metadata, and precise location data generated just by being online are becoming monetizable assets under IPO pressure with defaults that favor the company, not the consumer. If SpaceX goes public, Starlink won't just be a satellite network. It will be a public market data business. And that raises a simple but uncomfortable test. Imagine this policy didn't belong to a space company. Imagine it belonged to your electric utility or your water provider. Same data, same defaults, same AI training. Would that feel acceptable to you? Because this isn't just about Starlink today. It's about what connectivity becomes next. A future where being online automatically means being observed, inferred, and modeled. Not because you opted in, but because that's how the system now works. And here's the question I want you to think about. If this all becomes normal for satellite internet, how long before it's normal everywhere else? Is this the future of connectivity you'd willingly choose, or just the one you woke up inside of? Tell me where you land. Again, I'm Jeff Galak, and I'll see you in the next one.